From VTV Channel 6 Studios in downtown Vernal, this is Local Point with your host, Chris Piner.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Local Point, sponsored by Ashley Regional Medical Center. I'm David Gale in for Chris Piner today. Senator Orrin Hatch is visiting the basin, and he's given us the opportunity to talk with him. And we've only got 10 minutes, so let's just get right to it. Welcome, Senator Hatch.
Happy to be here. Wonderful to be out here.
Well, let me just ask you that. What brings you all the way out here to eastern Utah?
Of course, I'm related to half of the basin. Yeah. My dad was born here, and of course, my great-grandfather, Jeremiah Hatch, helped to found Vernal and Ashley Valley.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Now the Hatches are everywhere, and I have people all over saying hello to me and saying, I think I'm related to you.
Well, welcome back then.
Happy to be here. Well, we love this area. Used to come over here and bring my dad to fish and so forth, and he loved Vernal. Of course, he's gone now, but
yes.
But you couldn't find anybody who was more in love with Vernal than my dad.
That's great. Now, there's obviously you got a little break from Congress right now. What are some of the main topics that you're talking to people as you come out over in this direction?
Well, they're almost all involving jobs, involving the deficit, involving national security at this point with Libya involved, and of course Iraq and Afghanistan. Those are all important issues, and then we have all kinds of local issues as well. But we work in a wide variety of areas. I just wish we had more conservatives there, so that we could so we get things under control. Because the big issues are all monetary issues, and the big issue we're going back to is whether or not the debt ceiling ought to be lifted.
Right. And what's going to happen with that? I mean,
well, we're $14 trillion in $14.3 trillion in debt. The president wants to lift the debt ceiling and add another $2.2 trillion for next year. I mean, it's never going to end if we allow him to continue to do that. We're talking about having $22 trillion debt by 2020, and the interest alone would be $1 trillion. So this country cannot sustain that and continue to be the greatest country in the world. So these are really big issues. Plus, we do have the war issues, and we have a lot of other economic issues as well.
Let me ask you about that debt ceiling. When somebody says, well, what about our credit rating? If we don't raise that debt ceiling, we're not going to be as viable in the world economy, and people aren't going to want to borrow from us.
Well, Standard & Poor's just downgraded us to a negative. They've kept the AAA rating on our bonds, but that'll go too unless we get things under control. Now, what are we going to do? Just keep going further in debt, or are we going to take a stand and start standing up and doing what's right? We're going to have a bad rating anyway if we don't get spending under control. I'm not going to vote for the debt ceiling unless there is a tremendous change that I don't believe the Democrats will allow to happen.
Well, let's jump now over to...
And so I'm going to vote against it. I think you can pretty well rely on that.
Okay, we got that right. Against it. Against the debt ceiling.
Right.
Again, less
well, I voted against the continuing resolution as well.
Well, very nice. Out here in Vernal and the entire Uinta Basin, obviously we are energy-based. We do a lot of drilling. The department, the Bureau of Land Management, and Secretary Salazar's change to the permitting process and stopping a lot of the permits a few years back. Recently, that has been, as far as my knowledge goes, lifted with the latest budget that was passed, or at least some certain restraints that he had put on. How does that change what's going to happen now as far as either allowing or making allowing the progress of drilling to go forward?
Well, I'm hoping that Secretary Salazar understands that our country's in need of oil. We're in need of natural gas. We're awash in natural gas. We need to continue to develop that, turn automobiles into natural gas vehicles, and especially heavy-duty trucks. We have a little company down in St. George that has developed a computerized system of combining natural gas with diesel and getting a 40% payoff. I mean, that's the kind of thing we can do if we're given a chance to do it. As far as drilling, I still remember having 131 parcels for auction, and SUA sued against 77 of those, and the Secretary of the Interior lifted all 77 of those out of that federal suit. And we'd gone through years, 7 years of environmental hoops to get to the point where you could have the auction. Right. I mean, that's the kind of thing that is killing our country, that we're unwilling to really do what has to be done to develop our natural resources, and oil's one of them. Last time I heard, 95% of all of our energy in this country comes from oil, gas, coal, and nuclear. Now, it's wonderful to do wind, solar, geothermal. I'm the one who put bills through that basically gave the incentives to do those. Conservative Republican.
Right.
But I'm a big supporter of developing our own oil and and gas, coal, and of course even nuclear. And frankly, we've got to get wise in this country. We can no longer afford to send $500 billion to $700 billion to enemies to purchase oil when we have it right here at home. Right. We have it offshore. The president goes down to Brazil, compliments them on their offshore drilling rigs that came from the Gulf,
right,
and then says, we're going to buy your oil. What's the matter with this man? Doesn't he realize that we should be drilling off our Gulf, off our Atlantic and West Coast? We know that there are billions and billions of barrels of oil there, and it's recoverable, but it takes about 7-8 years to develop one of those offshore rigs. And all those rigs are leaving us because they can't get permits. You know, the North Slope, ANWR. We've got oil shale and tar sands in Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming with 1.6 trillion barrels of proven reserves, recoverable reserves. More reserves than that, but recoverable reserves about 1.6 trillion, and we can't get the administration to cooperate. I mean, it's almost like they're just willing to let our country go down as they talk about wind, solar, and some of the environmental approaches towards energy.
All right, well, we've got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more with Orrin Hatch, Senator Hatch. After this, we're going to talk a little bit more about health care issues facing the nation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ashley Regional Medical Center now offers neonatal services and a Level 2 nursery, along with our quality obstetrical services. The Level 2 nursery provides state-of-the-art monitoring and clinical care for infants at 32 weeks and older. The team of skilled nurses, pediatricians, and family practice physicians, along with Medical Director Dr. Daniel Kwok, neonatologist, help Ashley Regional Medical Center offer your infant excellent care right here at home.
All right, welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. Senator Orrin Hatch is in the studio discussing current topics on Capitol Hill. We left talking about oil, about our energy here in the United States. Let's talk a little bit about health care.
Sure.
We know that on the conservative side, there's a real big push right now to try to repeal the health care that was put in by Obama. What's going on the Senate side? What would it take to be able to actually have some real change there?
Take a lot more Republicans, but even some Democrats are now starting to get very unnerved by it. But they all voted to sustain it just a week and a half ago. So it's going to take a lot more Republicans. We want to repeal it, we want to replace it. We know how to do health care, we know how to do it within budget. But these guys are just spending us blind. When I say these guys, I'm talking about the Democrats. If you recall, Obamacare had only Democrats support it. All 60 Democrats in the Senate supported it, no Republicans, and all of the Democrats in the House, no Republicans supported it. And anytime you see a bill of that import that is so partisan, you know it's a lousy bill, and it's a lousy bill. I know what they're doing. They've put off really the implementation until 2014, although the taxes they're assessing. And I think they're going to, if Obama is reelected, he's going to throw his hands in the air within a year or so and say, well, we've got to go to a single payer system because this isn't working. In other words, we've got to go to federal government, Washington-run health care, socialized medicine.
Yeah,
That's what
socialism.
they're after. And they know it's not going to work. It's not working well, and it's costing us an arm and a leg. And in the end, health care is being stunningly hurt.
When you have such differences, I mean, obviously that bill, like you said, it was very partisan.
Right.
How do you, as a member of Congress, with very different ideas many times than those on the other side of the aisle, how do you work together to come to common ground?
Well, I'm known as one of the people who can bring both sides together, but it's going to have to be on a center-right basis. In other words, every bill that I've ever done with the Democrats has been center-right. It may not be everything conservatives want, but it's certainly a lot better than they were going to get if we didn't have that approach towards things. Right now, the Democrats want everything far left, everything to be more spending, and frankly, I can't tolerate that, and it's very difficult to get Republicans to support them. Thank goodness. And I've got to tell you, the Republicans are the conservative party. But I also have to tell you that over my many years in the Senate, we've never had a fiscal conservative majority, except through great presidential leadership, Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2, and even Clinton on occasion. We've always had 3 to 6 more moderate to liberal Republicans who will go with the Democrats on all spending issues. And it's always been a battle. But now everybody's so concerned with how Obama is spending us blind that even our more liberal Republicans are sticking with us. For instance, I'm the author of the Balanced Budget Constitutional Amendment. I brought 5 of them to the floor. We passed one back in 1982. Tip O'Neill killed it. You have to have a 2/3 vote. We had 69 votes. I've never got less than 63 votes. In 1997, I brought it to the floor. I had 67 votes, so enough votes to pass it. And right at the last minute, John Hines in Pennsylvania flipped off. He was a supporter all the way through and then flipped off because the unions said they quit supporting him. And it went down by 1 vote defeat. Now, can you imagine if we had passed that balanced budget amendment and the states had, 38 states had ratified it, we wouldn't be in this colossal mess we're in today. So we've come up with a balanced budget amendment. It's the Hatch, Lee, my partner in Utah, Lee, and Cornyn, who's a former Supreme Court justice in Texas. And frankly, it's getting a lot of acclaim, and a lot of people are looking at it, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do it, but we'd have to have 20 Democrats come on board. And I've got to tell you, that's the liberal party in this country.
Yeah. Now, we've only got about 50 seconds left. Okay. I wanted to ask you about your position as the top Republican in the Finance Committee and how that may have any effect. I'll let you answer that, and anything else that you think that your constituents out here in the Uinta Basin might like to know.
That's critical. That's critical because it takes a long time to get to be ranking on the Finance Committee. And should I be fortunate enough to be reelected in 2013, I'll become the chairman, where I'll set the agenda, and that's where all the spending is, 60% of it. That's where all the tax programs are. That's where Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, international trade, bonding, everything is there. And if I can get enough conservatives, we're going to turn this country around, and we're going to save Social Security, and we're going to get Medicaid and Medicare so that they work under fiscal constraints and don't run us into bankruptcy. And then we're going to have to work on taxation and a number of other things to get this country moving again. But we should all hope that we can get control of that committee in 2013. Right now, the committee doesn't do anything without me anyway, but it's hard to push our agenda, which would be more jobs, more opportunities, more private sector, less government, more opportunities out there. And frankly, that's what Republicans stand for. It's what I stand for. And I'd just like to get 60 conservative Republicans. We had that. We'll turn this country around tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so very much, Senator Hatch, for joining us out here today. Thank you for joining us. Hope you can see you again here, right here, next edition of Local Point.